Once you have a rendering like this, it still feels pretty flat and almost a little bit like a coloring book page. We don't have any light or shadow in here, which is affecting this a lot. So we're going to learn how to add that. And what you want to do is make sure that you're out in your main area with all of your things here. I like to go through and just neaten up any of my layers, delete anything that I didn't end up using, pulling things into these folders or layer groups. That way I just don't have so much here. And then I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to render my light and shadow over all of this. So I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to hit add new layer. I then need to make some choices about the color of light that I want in the room. Do I want this to be a warm toned light? Is it a cool bright light? All of those things.
Do we have to incorporate this?
I would encourage you to, although it doesn't apply as much to fashion.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to choose a color of my light. I like to do a warm light. One thing I do have to think about in this situation though is any warm light I apply here, I'm going to choose a hue on the yellow or orange spectrum, which with these greens might end up not looking the best. So for this example, I might try to keep it closer to like a creamy tone, or as close as I can get to like that green without shifting over into a cooler light. I could also just choose to do a cooler light and keep it over in this blue tone. That actually might be better for this rendering. We can try both of them and toggle back and forth between them and see which one looks the best. My light source is coming from my lamp here, and unless there's a covering on the top of the lamp, it's going to shine up as well as down. So I'm going to come in with my vector brush and make sure it's set at the size I want. And I'm just going to draw down from the corners down to my floor. And then I'm going to give it a circular bottom because it's shining out of this circular shade. I am also going to do that up top here, although I don't have the circular cone shape here, although I would if you could see my ceiling. And then I'm going to close off the bottom of each of these cones and fill it in. Whoa. Gotta make sure that these corners are nice and tight. And fill the shape in with that blue light. Then I'm going to come over to my slider bars and I'm going to lower the opacity here of this light. And while in some of these areas it is shining realistically and I'm getting the idea of light, it's not curving or anything like that. So I have to figure out in what places is the light getting blocked, and one of the places it's getting blocked is onto the seat of this chair. So I'm simply going to grab my eraser, make sure that it's at a reasonable size for the size of space I'm erasing. That way I'm not having it tiny and trying to just erase a bunch. Sometimes I'll set it smaller and I'll almost like carve out the shape and then set it bigger. But I'm going to come across the top of my armrest that is still getting some of the light and carve out from this shape anything that the light is no longer hitting, which is going to include these legs, and it's actually going to include anything underneath this chair from about right there to about there. And I'm just going to erase it. I could also come in and use the lasso tool to draw around this chunk and then hit erase. That way I'm not spending all of my time going back and forth erasing. And then I'll deselect. Another place that I'm seeing where the light would get blocked is this leg going forward. So I'm going to figure out kind of the shape of that leg and how it would block the light. Might even block it a little bit more this way. And then I have to deal with this table as well. The table, a little funky because it's translucent, right? So some of the light does shine through. It also gets refracted weirdly. What I like to do in a case like this, where I'm dealing with light shining through things, is I'll think about reflecting the shape of anything that is solid and carving that out. Like that. And then, let's see, I think I would get some shadows like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this blur tool, and it's going to convert it to pixel here for me in a moment. I'm going to have to convert it to pixel manually because you can't use the blur tool on a vector layer. And I'm just going to adjust the size of my tool. And kind of blur the edges out. As they hit here on the bottom. And I might have to come back in and redo some stuff. And I might have to adjust my brush. Okay, it's set to graphite right now, which is kind of a weird. Which smudge? There should be a way to change this, and I'm just losing it. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, tap that again. Gonna go to basic and hard round. That's with the opacity. That's why it's smudging weird. Okay, much nicer. So I might kind of blur that out. I might even just select this whole bit right here along the wall and hit transform and then liquefy, and let's see what I want to do. Upload it. Yeah, I didn't like doing that. I might just adjust its opacity downward. That way it's kind of fading out. So you can adjust the individual pieces of that layer if you just have them selected with the opacity as well. Oh, no, you can't. I can do that in another program. Might just have to play around with the blur in this. Or I could take this selection and cut selection new layer, and paste selection. And now I can go in and adjust that opacity to be lower, which is, I think, that would be my preference, is just to cut out that part, put it on a new layer so that I can change the opacity so it's not as bright. I'm still getting some of those shadows in there. I'm going to just fix some of this that I kind of mucked up. Okay. So I have an indication of light hitting objects here. I might want to decide that I want to come in and put a highlight on top of this table where the light is hitting strongest. I will go into my table layers, add in a new layer, and I think I'm just gonna push up this brightness as far as I can, or maybe even push it more towards the like white, and then take this and give myself a nice bright layer that I can still come in and adjust the opacity of so that I have kind of that shine. And I could even add another layer where I keep adjusting the opacity less and less because I'm getting a bright light shining off of it. So that's one way to put in a little bit of light. Now I want to render in some shadow too, because there are some areas where I'm considering all of my flat colors like a mid-tone. I added in highlights with my lamp. Let's add in shadows. I'm going to do a new layer. This layer needs to go underneath everything except for my background and my rug. And I'm going to choose a color to use as my shadows. Let's use this. And I'm going to figure out where they go. Let's see, there would be a shadow cast here. I'm going to use kind of that angle. Okay. What would be the angle here? Maybe about like that. And then, yeah, that looks about right. I do need to finish out the shape even though I can't see it underneath these if I want to use my fill. And then I'm going to adjust the opacity here as well. And I can mess with that as much as I want. If I want an even darker layer of shadows right underneath the chair, I can come in on a new layer, just give myself the under the chair area, fill that in, and then still give it some opacity so that it's sitting there. So that's how you can just quickly add in the suggestion of your shadows and your light, using layers and opacity to make those adjustments. I feel like that's even like a little too dark. And honestly, I'd probably have a third layer that's like really far under here. So if I did that, just do it for the sake of a demonstration. Oh, I keep forgetting to switch back to my brush. All right. So you can render them in just like that to give yourself a little bit of light and shadow as well. And that just helps make your scene way more dynamic. just like it did when we did our graphite drawings.